All right, welcome to my channel. Today we're going to talk a little bit about the differences between the analog or the negative process versus digital. So stay tuned. All right, so I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on uh, negatives, the negative process, um, shooting a film, printing in photographic paper, and so on. And there's a lot of people who are interested in that pathway. At the end of the day, it's a pathway. Whatever you do, if it's a print, if it's digital, whatever it is. And there's a couple of misconceptions that I wanted to clarify that I've heard a lot of people mention, but I think they're not understanding how the negative process works. Okay, so I have a couple of books from Ansel Adams. I would highly recommend it if you are interested in learning about printing, about developing, and so on. Ansel Adams, the print, Ansel Adams, the negative, and I also have this one which I found it easier to understand by Harry Hornstein, Black and White Photography. Highly recommended. This actually helped me a lot. All right, so basically, some of the mistakes that I have seen in YouTube videos about film photography are regarding dynamic range and the way the actual print works. The negative process, working from a negative with film and then printing, it's a process that from the time of the exposure, you have to think about negative development and also how you're going to print. Um, Unlike digital, where you get a raw file in Photoshop or Lightroom, and then you start working from that point. Uh, with film photography, when you have a scene and talking about dynamic range, it's not really a major difference between digital and analog. It really isn't. A lot of people say, "Oh, digital has more dynamic range and so on." That's not necessarily true. Um, you can contract. Let's put it this way. Let's say you contract the scene in film where, let's say, you have highlights that are too bright, or shadows are getting, you're not getting any detail with your shadows. You can always, while you expose for your shadows, which is different than digital, and you can always contract or lower the contrast of your highlights by development and also by printing. So yes, you can contract very contrasty scenes in the final print. It's absolutely doable, but you have to think about this um, from the time you expose to the way you're going to develop the negative. Sometimes even choosing the right negative for the job, knowing that it's a contrasty scene and so on. So let's talk a little bit about dynamic range. Uh, with the negative, you're exposing for the shadows, because your shadows in a negatives are the thinnest part of your negative, where it's very easy for you to not have enough information, and you can lose out detail in your shadows. Now the highlights are interesting, and compared to digital, um, with negatives, when you have blown highlights, it's a more, what's the right word, progressive. It takes more time for to actually have highlights that you can't print. It's a shallow curve. With digital, uh, once you hit that point, it really quickly you lose all information and you have just pure white. That's an interesting aspect. So another misconception that I have seen a lot is about toning. I believe that today in 2025, black and white printing is better with a negative than with digital, and for several reasons. Let me explain. When you're printing digitally, a lot of times a printer will use different color inks to print, even when you opt for only having the printer use black and white inks. I have noticed this, and that could be a problem because you can end up with some color casts. I've seen it happen. It's not that big of a deal, but it's something to think about. And when it comes to toning now, this is the interesting part. Um, this is a toning notebook that I did a few years ago. It's the same image printed on different papers using different toners. I use some sepia, let me see, some polytoner. I used, what else do I have here? Different papers, selenium toner. And one of the things that I've noticed, one misconception that I've noticed with people, especially photographers who are more into digital, is that digitally, what I have noticed. Oh, here's a perfect example. Hang on a second. I did this test the other day. I printed, I photographed some prints that I toned. I took color samples of them, and then I applied it as if these images were toned. And at first, well, here's one example that for a cyanotype toning. This is albumin, and this is, what is this? This is basically a red, some experimentation I did. And when I printed these, I immediately noticed that everything was being toned from my highlights to my shadows, which it doesn't work that way with prints. For example, a sepia toner, you basically have a two-step process where you remove some of the metal or silver in this case of the image, which usually affects your highlights first, and then you replace it with another metal. So let me see if I can show an example here. So what happens is your highlights, your midtones get affected first before the shadows. That's another misconception. I've seen this a lot of times when people say, no, I'm going to do a sepia-like toning for this digital image. And I look at the image and I say, well, yes and no. I see where you're going, but basically what you're doing in Photoshop or whatever software you use is it's applying almost like putting in a filter, a color cast on top of the image, which affects everything. So you have your highlights and your shadows. Look, this is a good example. And your shadows with the same color cast, which it doesn't happen in uh, in prints, in negatives, and the analog process. So this is very interesting. Now, can you simulate it by using curves and so on and applying filters just to the midtones and highlights? Absolutely, you can. But I just wanted to put that out there, just to have this discussion. Now, at the beginning, I said that black and white is printing is better than digital. Yes, I believe so. You have inks today that they're excellent, unless you're using. I know there are systems where all the inks are uh, variations of black and gray. Uh, I understand that's also something that one can do, which I think it's great. But um, where is it easier? It's easier in the sense that that's the original medium. I mean, if you want to have a black and white image, uh, you want to replicate a look, the original is always going to be better. Now, can one argue that okay, now we have the new black and white, which is digital black and white photography? Yeah, absolutely, no problem. But I just wanted to put that out there. I've seen a lot of people make comments online and post videos about this, but there's a couple of things that they are maybe they don't understand how the process works. Um, but it's just a different path. It's a different path. At the end of the day, as a photographer, if you use a large format camera like this one, this is a 5x7 Wisner, or you use a digital camera, these are just tools. They're tools. There's different tools for different. You can't shoot a wedding with this. uh, Obviously, when I used to photograph with this, I mean, I could work with maybe 10 images at a time, 10 negatives that I'll carry, and usually to duplicate uh, shots. That means at the end of the day, I'll be working with 5 images. Now we can do bursts of 20 images in a second. So, um, but uh, the advantages of silver, I believe, are the texture. I believe that it creates a look. Watch the Godfather movie, the first ones that were shot in film. There is a graininess, there is a texture, there's a color to it that it's just beautiful. When you look at the same movie digitized, or the newer ones, you just it's too much detail. It's too, what's the word? It's different. Let's be nice and call it different. Okay, so very well. I just wanted to get that out there for those who are interested and curious. Um, the negative process, the print process, has its advantages over digital. It's a different process that needs to be better understood by digital photographers. That I've seen a lot of videos that they just say, "Well, it's so much better. Digital is so much better." Not really, not really. Even with dynamic range, it's I. Um, if you are printing, for example, if you're printing platinum or palladium, for example, you have so much room. You have the ability to go with detail in your highlights and your shadows is it's amazing. And even in black and white, there are so many ways from developing your negative um, to the print that you can really work with very wide dynamic scenes with very broad range. Very well. So I don't want to make this video too long. It's just some food for thought, some ideas for discussion. And if you haven't subscribed, please do so. And I hope you have a great day. Bye bye.